So can AJ Terrell get himself back to elite status? So I saw the listing of the cornerbacks, right? Pro Football Focus is going through and ranking positional groups, right? And they're ranking their three best players for every team, ranking the quarterbacks and this, that, and the other. Desmond Ritter came in 31st in the top 32 quarterbacks. Only Anthony Richardson was behind him, right? Okay. I mean, again, it is what it is, in this point. But look, I like Pro Football Focus, so I'm a fan of what their work is. I'm a fan of doing some of these things. It's the off season, right? We have plenty of time to get into these different kinds of things, right? I mean, it's list season, as we like to say. But it is interesting. The number one corner they have in the NFL is Sauce Gardner going into this season. Jalen Ramsey is number two. Remember him when we wanted to trade for him? Okay, anyway. Patrick Surtain, another guy that, might have been available to anyway. But coming in at number 12 on Pro Football Focus's top 32 cornerbacks is AJ Terrell. And I thought this was an interesting write-up that they had for him. Quote, Terrell is a great case study in the volatility of coverage and cornerback performance. His rookie season was solid before a breakout sophomore campaign that saw him play like an all-pro with an 85.6 Pro Football Focus coverage grade. In 2022, his play dropped back down to earth, and he allowed 9 touchdowns. Terrell definitely possesses the ability to be an elite cornerback, but needs to prove he can find that play again in 2023. Now, I'm one of those people that I don't believe that a really good secondary makes your pass rush great. I think that's mythology. Either you have a guy that can get home and get the quarterback on the ground, or you don't. You don't. You can, because again, in 2023 NFL football, you're not going to be able to cover everybody for a length of time. It's not 1978. 1978, let's go back to that year. For instance, you would have Bolitnikoff on one side, Cliff Branch on the other side, and then you might have Dave Casper run out in a pattern. So you had 3 guys that you had to account for, right? Today's modern NFL football, 4, 5, 6 guys that are all running around on the field and all running all kinds of I mean, the game is completely different. You don't have 2 or 3 guys. You don't have just 2 wide receivers, a tight end on the edge, and that's the 3 guys that are going to go out in pattern. And maybe, you trade your tight end for a running back that would go. It's not 1978 football anymore. You have all kinds of guys that go out in patterns, right? You have 5 guys at a time that go out in patterns. So from that standpoint, you're not going to be able to cover everybody for any length of time. If you can't get to the quarterback, you're going to have struggles. So I don't believe that a good secondary makes a good pass rush. But I do believe that if you have a team that can get home, you can make your team look better in the secondary. San Francisco 49ers come to mind. They have a great defensive line. They don't have a lot of great defensive backs on that roster. They're playing with 5th and 6th round guys and a couple of undrafted free agents because they can get away with that because their front line is so dominant, right? We talk about them being the best line of scrimmage team in the NFL. So if we can get our pass rush at some point fixed, I definitely think that AJ Terrell can get himself back up to that elite status that he was. And look, that's life of a cornerback, right? There was some realities that set in last year. He didn't play well at times. I don't think it's all his fault. And obviously, they picked on AJ Terrell. They saw something that said, okay, we can get at AJ Terrell. Coming off of what was an outstanding sophomore season. He was I think he and Jalen Ramsey were the top 2 graded corners in the NFL. They had the top 2 grades of anybody in the NFL. And it looked like this guy was the limit. And there was some reality that set in last year. Do I think AJ Terrell can be an elite number 1 corner? Yes, I do. And I'm even amazed at how good AJ Terrell has been. I didn't think when I looked at that draft from 2020, I looked at the idea of, okay, I thought Okudah was the number one corner coming out of the draft. I thought Henderson out of Florida was the second best corner, and then I would have had AJ Terrell somewhere in that third, fourth best corner range. But I didn't see how well that he would play at this level. And so he's obviously been sort of a blessing in some ways, where you picked him, 16th in the draft, and he's blossomed into a top tier type of player. That's the kind of guys that help you win football games, when guys overperform even on their rookie contract from what you expect them to be. Not that the Falcons didn't think that he would be a good player, but again, I don't know that we saw top one or two corners in the NFL in AJ Terrell. And he was obviously, he's been a home run pick for this team. And I still think he's one of the three best players on the Falcons roster. But things have to change around a little bit. And if we can get this pass rush fixed, and I think with Jeff Okudah on the other side, I think with the improvements in our secondary, with Bates, with, Okudah, with Mike Hughes, guys like that we're adding more and more talent. And I think the positional group of defensive backs have increased, then I think AJ Terrell can be a guy that gets back to having that kind of season that he did in his second year versus the one that he had last year. And look, if you find something on film to exploit about AJ Terrell, every team in the league is going to try to do it. Every team is going to try to figure out a way to exploit what his weaknesses are. And I think that if we get our pass rush fixed, I think with having somebody on the other side of him, I think that there's no reason to not think that he is, or should say, I think there's no reason to think that he cannot get back up to elite status as a corner in the NFL, that he can be that top tier kind of guy. And again, we start looking around and saying, okay, if I have a top tier corner, if Ebiketie breaks out and we have a great pass, now our defense can really be something. Now our defense can really get after it, get after the quarterbacks, get after, teams, obviously not be the worst pass defense in the NFL, increase our pass rush. So I do believe that AJ Terrell is a guy who's going to get back to elite status. Maybe he won't get back up to what his sophomore season was this upcoming season, but I think that he's going to be really close. And I think with the addition of Okudah, who I think is going to be a real star and a real surprise for this team, that they have two really good cornerbacks. And maybe, again, if you can partner up AJ Terrell and Jeff Okudah for the long term and get those guys under contract for the long term, you might have something dynamic that's out there. All right, as you make Hittin' Hard your first listen every day, make sure you go into the comments section and let us know that you're an everyday listener to the program. We like to call them our everydayers. So whatever platform that you're on, leave us a comment. Let us know that you're listening in 5 days a week. So we greatly appreciate the fact that you're a part of our community and a part of our ever-growing audience. So we thank you so much for all of that.